you make a great point. Like one of the ways they lifted people out of poverty was to literally change the definition of poverty. Matt, do you remember the specifics of that? I forget like the exact numbers.
They just lowered the threshold. So it was, what they went from like, I don't know the exact numbers, but it was something like the poverty level would be $2 a day, and they lowered it to like $125 a day, something in that range, and then adjusting for inflation. So it's a little bit complex. But ultimately, by redefining and lowering the bar for being out of poverty, you now suddenly have more people who are not in poverty. And the new definition for this group is just low income, right? So like suddenly, 100 million new people are not in poverty.
When nothing has changed for them other than a government definition.
Right.
With the Belt and Road Initiative, this claim of like $1 trillion of development funding, some of the biggest countries that have received those funds too, like Philippines, supposedly was going to get a loan of $180 billion under the Duterte regime, which made Duterte switch his allegiance pretty quickly over to China from the United States.
Right, but how much of that $180 billion did the Philippines actually receive during Duterte's tenure?
Well, about $400 million, which is a teeny percentage.
Okay, so that's like half of 1%. Yeah, no, less than that. That's a quarter of 1%.
To be fair, if somebody offered me like a couple $100 billion and only gave me $400 million, I'd be okay with that.
Is that your price, Chris?
Switch sides. Chris, would you switch sides to the CCP for $400 million?
Now we know $400 million is
pretty good. I mean, I could probably live off of that for a while, make some sound investments.
$1 for each follower on YouTube, something like that.
Where was I going with that?
So the Philippines was...
The Philippines. Oh, yeah. The Philippines, China's investment did not really pan out. But you see how it did kind of buy off Duterte. But now that, that never materialized, and you see with this new president, Marcos Jr., you see the Philippines seeming to shift back more towards the U.S. There's new agreements to have more U.S. troops and more bases in the Philippines. Do you think this is going to become something you see around the world, like all these other countries that were like, yeah, let's team up with China, Belt and Road. And as they have been bitten by that, do you think they'll start to shift allegiances away from the U.S.? Is the Philippines just the beginning of this?
I certainly would hope so. I think that, a lot of countries are highly critical of China in terms of the Belt and Road. Italy actually is the most recent. Italy is the only country, a G7 country, that's a member of the Belt and Road. And its Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, just announced in the last few days that she's favoring leaving the Belt and Road. She told that to House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. I think that is a hopeful sign. I think countries are getting more critical, more understanding of what the reality is in terms of Belt and Road. Often, I think the Belt and Road, served as a vehicle for China to make big announcements of big money loans, and in reality, they were getting political concessions for those announcements, but then the loans never came through. So exactly right. As countries like Philippines realize this, they're shifting back to their prior positions. But still, there's a lot of, support for China among elites in the developing countries. There's, for whatever reason, I'm not sure if China is bribing these countries, their leaders, if the leaders somehow hope to get, maybe it's because we haven't been tough enough in terms of demanding that countries take a side against China. We're watching Taiwan's allies, the countries that recognize its sovereignty, fall one after another over the years. And we just don't seem to be taking a stand against that. which sends these countries around the world the signal that we don't care, but China cares a lot. So might as well go with China because that's where you're going to get rewarded. You're not going to get rewarded either way. Cleo Pascal was talking about this on your show the other day. We're not taking a position encouraging countries to recognize Taiwan's sovereignty. So why would they? They're not getting a benefit. We're not asking them to take a side. Maybe we should be asking countries to take a side. I think we should, actually.
I think that's why Taiwan is so important, because the U.S. is sending mixed messages about how much support, particularly in the Indo-Pacific, how much support these countries can get from the U.S. And if Taiwan does fall to the Chinese Communist Party, that's the clearest signal you could get that the U.S. cannot protect them from China. So better cut a deal with them now.
Yeah, we're also sending Beijing a message that we don't care about Taiwan. We've been doing that since at least 1979, maybe 1972. And the fact that we're doing that actually probably encourages Beijing to build up its military for an eventual invasion of Taiwan. And once that happens, we're probably going to see a similar kind of support for Taiwan that we're seeing today in terms of Ukraine. And you're going to get a pretty big war that could escalate and could pull the United States in and other NATO allies. So it's an incredibly dangerous thing to do, to be so limp about Taiwan. And I think we've been similarly limp about Ukraine, and it's led to war.